I was just trying to hide. That's all it was, a moment of escape, a breath between the chaos of school and the noise at home. I didn't mean to sneak in or do anything wrong. I just needed somewhere safe. Somewhere quiet. And when I knocked on his door and no one answered, I figured it was okay to wait inside. We'd done it 100 times before. His parents were always out, or busy with work, or just not around. It wasn't like I hadn't been there alone with him before either. But this time was different. This time, he wasn't there. He had left me a message earlier that morning saying something came up, family stuff, urgent, couldn't talk about it. I told him I understood. I said I'd catch him later. But after everything that happened that day, another fight at home, another stupid comment from someone at school, another reminder that I didn't quite fit anywhere, I just wanted to be somewhere where I could feel normal again. So I went to his house. I let myself in like I always did. The smell of his mom's candles hit me right away, vanilla and lavender, calming somehow. I kicked off my shoes and dropped onto the couch, letting my head fall back against the cushion. The silence was heavy but comforting. No one yelling, no one judging, no one watching. Just me. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe. I closed my eyes and let go for a second. Let go of the anger, the fear, the exhaustion of pretending. I didn't cry, not then, but I felt the weight pressing down on my chest, like it always did when I tried to hold everything in. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Maybe 20 minutes. Maybe longer. I scrolled through my phone, half-heartedly checking messages I didn't want to read. Then I heard it, the sound of keys jingling outside the door. My heart skipped. I sat up quickly, brushing my hands over my face like that would make me look less like someone who had come here to hide. The door opened slowly, and for a second, I thought it was him. I almost smiled. But then I saw the face behind the door, not my best friend, not even close. It was his dad. He looked surprised, confused, maybe even a little angry. I stood up fast, suddenly aware of how strange this must have looked. Me, alone in his house, no warning, no explanation. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile I didn't feel. Your son isn't home. I just came by to drop something off." It was the dumbest lie I'd ever told, and I knew it. His dad didn't say anything at first. He just stared at me, not with rage, but with something else. Suspicion. Concern. I couldn't tell. He stepped inside, closed the door behind him, and took off his coat slowly, like he was buying time to figure out what to say. "Is everything okay?" he asked finally, voice calm but firm. I nodded too fast. "Yeah, totally fine. I just forgot something last time I was here, so I stopped by to grab it." He looked around the room like maybe the thing I supposedly forgot would magically appear. "You've been here long." "Nope," I lied again. "Just got here a few minutes ago." There was a pause. A long one. Long enough for me to feel the sweat building under my shirt. Long enough for me to wonder if I should just walk out the door and never come back. But I stood my ground. Forced eye contact. Tried to look like I had nothing to hide. Because I didn't. Not really. Except maybe the part where I wasn't sure if I was hiding more than just my presence in that house. His dad finally spoke again, slower this time. "You know, you're always welcome here. You're like family." The words were kind, but they made me feel worse. Like I was betraying some unspoken rule just by being there. "Thanks," I mumbled. "I appreciate that." Another pause. Another stare. Longer this time. And then he said something that made my stomach drop. "I hope you know what you're doing." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even loud. But it hit me like a punch to the gut. I blinked at him, trying to play it off like I didn't hear what he just said. Like I didn't understand the meaning behind those 5 simple words. But I did. I knew exactly what he meant. Or at least, I thought I did. Was he talking about me being alone in the house? About me coming over without telling anyone? Or was it something deeper? Something neither of us wanted to say out loud. I swallowed hard and forced another smile. "I do," I said, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. He nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Good." And that was it. He walked past me, into the kitchen, like nothing had happened. Like we hadn't just had an entire conversation wrapped in silence and subtext. I stood there for a second, frozen, heart pounding in my ears. Then I grabbed my jacket and left. Fast. Without looking back. Without saying goodbye. As soon as I got outside, the cold air hit me like a slap. I pulled my hoodie tighter around me and started walking, not sure where I was going, only knowing I had to get away. Away from the house. Away from him. Away from whatever just happened in that room. My mind raced. What did he mean? Did he know? Had he figured it out? Had someone told him something? Or was I just paranoid, reading into every word because I was already carrying so much guilt? I replayed the whole scene in my head over and over again. Every glance, every pause, every word, trying to find a way to convince myself that it was nothing. That I was overreacting, that I was just being weird again. But deep down, I knew better. I knew that something had shifted. Something had changed, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for whatever came next. He didn't say much, but the way he looked at me made me feel like I'd already been judged. Like he could see right through me, past the lies and the fake smiles, straight into the part of me I barely understood myself. The whole drive home, or what passed for home, my mind kept replaying that moment over and over again. His eyes, that pause, the way he said, "I hope you know what you're doing." It wasn't a question, it was a warning, or maybe it was just concern. But either way, it felt like an accusation. When I got back to my house, I walked in like nothing had happened. My mom was in the kitchen, humming along to some old song on the radio. She barely looked up when I passed by. "You okay?" she asked casually, not really paying attention. I nodded and mumbled something about being tired, then went straight to my room and shut the door behind me. I dropped onto my bed and stared at the ceiling, letting the silence press down on me like a blanket I couldn't pull off. What did he mean? Did he think I was trying to take advantage of his son? Was he implying something else? Something worse? I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that he was just being protective, that any parent would be suspicious if they found someone alone in their house. But deep down, I knew there was more to it. There had always been something strange about how he looked at us, not just me, but both of us. When we were together, when we laughed too loud, when we stayed up late playing video games on the couch. He never said anything, but sometimes I caught him watching. Just for a second. Then he'd look away like he hadn't been staring at all. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there with my phone in my hand, scrolling through messages I didn't want to read, photos of us I probably shouldn't have saved. Me and him, side by side, arms around each other, smiling like we had no idea what was coming. And maybe we didn't. Maybe we were just two kids who liked spending time together. Maybe that's all it was. But maybe it wasn't. The next day at school, I couldn't focus. Every teacher's voice sounded distant, like they were speaking underwater. I kept thinking about his dad's words. I kept seeing the look on his face when he walked in and saw me sitting there alone. I wanted to talk to him, to ask if his dad had said anything, to find out if he noticed the same things I did. But every time I saw him walking down the hallway, I hesitated. Every time he smiled at me from across the room, I looked away. Because suddenly, everything felt different. Suddenly, even being near him felt dangerous. By the end of the week, I was avoiding him completely. If he texted, I took forever to reply. If he sat next to me in class, I pretended to be busy with homework. I told myself it was because I needed space, because I was dealing with stuff at home, because I didn't want to drag him into whatever mess I was going through. But the truth was simpler than that. I was scared. Scared of what his dad might have seen. Scared of what he might figure out. Scared of what it meant if I was starting to feel something I couldn't explain. One afternoon, after school, I finally forced myself to talk to him. We were sitting outside on the steps of the library, the air cool and crisp, the sky painted orange with the setting sun. He looked at me, confused, like he'd been waiting for this conversation for days. "Are you mad at me?" he asked quietly. I shook my head too fast. "No, of course not." He frowned. "Then why have you been acting weird lately?" "I haven't," I lied. "Yes, you have." He paused, studying me. "Did something happen?" I almost told him. Right there, in that moment, I almost opened my mouth and let everything spill out. About his dad finding me in the house, about what he said, about how I couldn't stop thinking about it, about how I couldn't stop thinking about him asterisk. But I didn't. I just looked away and shrugged. "Nothing happened," I said, voice low. "I've just been stressed, I guess." He didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes. But he didn't push. He just sighed and leaned back against the step, looking up at the sky. Okay, he said, but it didn't sound like he meant it. We sat there for a while longer, not talking, just listening to the wind rustle through the trees. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was losing him. Not because he was angry, not because he was pulling away, but because I was pushing him away. Because I was afraid of what would happen if he got too close. Afraid of what his dad might have already figured out. Afraid of what I might finally admit to myself if I stopped running. That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every look, every unspoken thing between us. And I realized something. I wasn't just hiding from his dad anymore. I was hiding from him. From myself. From the truth I wasn't ready to face. And I didn't know how much longer I could keep pretending we were inseparable. Until we weren't. I remember the way things used to be, how easy it was just being with him. We didn't need words half the time. A look, a smirk, a shared silence was enough. He knew when I was upset before I even said anything. I could tell when he was hiding something just by the way he bit his lip or tapped his fingers against his knee. We were close in that way that made people ask questions sometimes, not out loud, not directly, but with their eyes, with the way they lingered on us too long when we laughed together or leaned into each other while watching a movie. But now everything felt like walking on broken glass. Every word, every glance, every moment we spent near each other had this invisible weight hanging over it. Like we both knew something had shifted, but neither of us wanted to say it out loud. And maybe that's what hurt the most, not the distance, not the silence, but the fact that we were both pretending nothing had changed. After that day at his house, after his dad found me alone inside, things between us started to unravel. Slowly at first, I'd catch myself hesitating before replying to his texts. I'd make excuses not to hang out, even when I had nowhere else to be. If we ended up sitting next to each other in class, I'd keep my head down, pretend to be busy with notes, avoid looking at him for too long. I told myself I was protecting him. Protecting us asterisk. But really, I was just running. From him. From me. From the truth I wasn't ready to face. He noticed, of course. How couldn't he? 1 minute we were best friends, always together, always laughing, always finding ways to fill the empty spaces between us with stories and music and stupid jokes that only we understood. The next, I was pulling away, putting up walls I didn't know how to explain. At first, he tried to figure it out. He'd ask if I was okay. If something was wrong. If I was mad at him. I'd shake my head and say no, everything's fine. But the more I lied, the more distant I became, and the more confused he got. One afternoon, after school, he finally confronted me. We were standing outside near his car, the sky darkening with clouds, the air thick with the promise of rain. He looked at me, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes searching mine like he was trying to find the real answer buried somewhere behind my silence. "Are you seriously not going to tell me what's going on?" he asked, voice low but firm. I shrugged, kicking at the ground with the toe of my shoe. "There's nothing to tell." He let out a short, frustrated laugh. "That's the problem. You keep saying that, but you're acting like I did something wrong. Like I hurt you somehow." "You didn't," I said quickly, maybe too quickly. He shook his head. "Then why are you avoiding me?" I didn't have an answer. Not one I could give him, anyway. Because how do you explain that you're scared? That you don't know what's happening inside your own head? That you're afraid of what might come out if you let yourself feel it? "I'm not avoiding you," I mumbled, staring at the pavement like it held all the answers I couldn't give him. "Yes, you are," he said, stepping closer. "You barely talk to me anymore. You don't sit with me at lunch. You ghost my texts. You act like I'm a stranger." His voice cracked a little on the last part, and I hated that I could hear the hurt in it. I swallowed hard, trying to hold back the lump forming in my throat. "I'm just dealing with stuff," I said quietly. "It's not about you." He let out a breath, shaking his head again. "That's not how it feels." I looked up then, meeting his eyes for the first time in days. And God, it hurt. It hurt because I could see how much this was affecting him. How much I was hurting him. And I hated that. I never wanted to make him feel like this. "I'm sorry," I whispered, voice barely audible. He studied me for a long moment, like he was trying to decide whether to push harder or just let it go. Finally, he sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Okay," he said, though it didn't sound like he meant it. "If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Whenever you're ready." And just like that, he walked away. I stood there, watching him go, feeling the space between us grow wider with every step he took. And I realized something in that moment. I wasn't just losing my best friend. I was losing the one person who made me feel like I belonged somewhere. The one person who made me feel like I wasn't completely alone in the world. The days turned into weeks. We still saw each other at school, still passed each other in the hallways, still exchanged polite smiles and half-hearted waves. But it wasn't the same. Nothing was the same. We were two people who used to be everything to each other, now reduced to strangers sharing the same space without really seeing each other anymore. And the worst part, I missed him. I missed us asterisk. I missed the way he used to make me feel like I mattered, like I was seen. I missed the comfort of knowing that no matter what happened, he'd always have my back. But I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to explain what I couldn't even understand myself. So I kept quiet. I kept running. I kept pretending like everything was fine. Even when I knew it wasn't. Even when I knew I was losing him. Even when I knew I was losing myself. It started with a phone call. Then came the yelling. And then, nothing. I remember exactly where I was when it happened. Sitting on my bed, scrolling through TikTok videos I wasn't even paying attention to, trying to distract myself from the usual spiral of thoughts that always seemed to find me late at night. My phone buzzed in my hand, and for a second, I thought it was just another meme from one of my friends or maybe a random text from someone I barely knew. But when I looked at the screen, I saw his name flashing back at me, and my heart immediately dropped into my stomach. He never called me anymore. Not since everything fell apart between us. So when I saw his number light up on my screen, I hesitated before answering. My thumb hovered over the green button for a few seconds too long, like I already knew whatever he had to say wasn't going to be good news. But I pressed it anyway. Because no matter how much distance we'd put between us, no matter how many silent conversations we'd shared in the hallway, no matter how much I tried to convince myself I didn't care, I still needed to hear his voice. "Hey," I said, forcing a calmness into my tone I definitely didn't feel. There was silence on the other end for a beat too long. Then he spoke, and I could tell right away something was wrong. His voice was tight, shaky, almost like he was trying not to cry. "I need to talk to you," he said. "About my dad." That was all it took for the weight in my chest to come crashing down. I sat up straighter, gripping my phone harder. "What about him?" He exhaled sharply, like he was trying to steady himself. "He told my mom something. About us." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "What?" My voice came out smaller than I expected. "He told her he thinks there's something going on between us," he said, voice rising slightly. "That we're more than just friends." My breath caught in my throat. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "What did she say?" "She flipped out," he muttered. "She started asking me questions. Like if it was true. If I was hiding something. If you were hiding something." He paused, and I could hear the frustration building in his voice. "I told her it wasn't true. That we're just friends. But now it's weird at home. My dad won't look at me. My mom keeps giving me these looks like she's trying to figure me out. It's like they think I'm lying." I swallowed hard, trying to push past the lump forming in my throat. "You didn't tell her anything, did you?" "No," he snapped. "Of course not. I wouldn't do that." There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost pleading. "But why didn't you tell me? Why did I have to find out from my dad?" I didn't know what to say. I couldn't explain it. How could I tell him that I didn't even understand it myself? That I didn't know how to put into words what I was feeling? That every time I tried to say something, the fear of losing him completely stopped me. I didn't know how. I finally whispered. "That's not an answer," he said, and I could hear the hurt creeping into his voice again. "You could have talked to me. You could have trusted me." "I did trust you," I said quickly, maybe too quickly. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to explain it." He let out a bitter laugh. "Explain what? That you liked me. That you've been hiding this whole time. That you've been acting weird because you were scared of what I'd think." I didn't respond. Because he was right. He sighed, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost resigned. I don't even know what to feel right now. I'm mad. I'm confused. I'm hurt. But mostly, I'm just tired of pretending like nothing changed. I closed my eyes, pressing my fingers against my temples. I didn't want to lose you. Well, congratulations, he said bitterly. Because I don't even know who you are anymore. His words cut deeper than I expected. I wanted to fight back, to defend myself, to tell him that I hadn't meant for any of this to happen, that I didn't ask for any of it. But I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew he was right. I had let things fall apart. I had let fear take over. And now, I was standing on the edge of losing the one person who meant the most to me. I'm sorry, I said, voice barely above a whisper. He didn't respond right away. When he finally did, his voice was cold. I need time to think. I can't keep doing this with you. And then the line went dead. I stared at my phone for a long time after that, replaying the conversation over and over again in my head. Every word, every pause, every unspoken thing between us. I felt like I was drowning in regret, in guilt, in the crushing weight of everything I hadn't said. And worst of all, I knew there was no way to take it back. The next few days passed in a blur. I avoided him at school. I turned off my notifications so I wouldn't see if he texted. I kept my head down, walked fast through the hallways, pretended like I didn't notice the way people looked at me differently now. Word had spread. Somehow, people knew. Or at least, they thought they did. Whispers followed me wherever I went. Side eyes lingered a little too long. Someone even made a joke loud enough for me to hear as I walked past their table in the cafeteria. I should have been used to it by now. People talking, people judging, people making assumptions about things they didn't understand. But it still hurt. It still made me feel like I was being suffocated under 1,000 invisible hands. Then came the final blow. One night, while I was scrolling through Instagram, trying to distract myself from the mess inside my head, I saw a post from his sister. Just a simple caption beneath a photo of them together, something about family and love and honesty. But underneath it, someone had commented, "Is this the same brother who's best friends with that gay kid?" And someone else replied, "Yeah, apparently there's some drama going on there." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I read the comments over and over again, nausea rising in my stomach. This was real now. This wasn't just something happening behind closed doors. This wasn't just something between me and him, or between him and his parents. This was out there, in the open, for everyone to see. I slammed my phone face down on my bed and buried my face in my hands, trying to steady my breathing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to disappear. But I couldn't. I had nowhere to run. Nowhere to hide. Because the truth was finally out. And I had no idea how to survive it. You never realize how loud silence can be until everyone is whispering your name. It started small. A few sideways glances in the hallway. A comment here or there, just under someone's breath but loud enough for me to hear. But soon, it wasn't just whispers anymore. It was open stares. Mocking. Laughter when I walked by. Someone even went as far as to draw something cruel on my locker. A crude drawing, a word I hated more than anything, written in Sharpie like they were trying to brand me with it forever. I tried to ignore it at first. I told myself that if I didn't react, if I kept my head down and stayed quiet, it would eventually blow over. But it didn't. It got worse. Much worse. And then came the messages. At first, they were anonymous, sent through fake accounts, filled with cruel jokes, ugly assumptions, and threats I didn't know if I should take seriously. Some were just words meant to hurt. Others suggested things I couldn't bring myself to read twice. I deleted them without responding. I blocked the accounts. But it didn't stop. New ones popped up like weeds, always finding a way to reach me no matter how many times I tried to shut them out. Then, the bullying wasn't just online anymore. One day after gym class, I was walking out of the locker room when someone shoved me hard into the wall. I stumbled, barely catching myself before I hit the ground. I looked up and saw one of the guys from the football team smirking at me, his friends laughing behind him like this was some kind of joke. "Freak," he muttered as he passed. I didn't say anything. I didn't fight back. I just walked away, pretending like it didn't shake me. Like I wasn't scared. Like I wasn't already breaking inside. But I was. The worst part. My parents found out. I don't know exactly how it happened. Maybe someone called them. Maybe a teacher finally decided enough was enough and reported what was going on. Or maybe it was just the way I started acting, quieter, more withdrawn, less like the kid they used to know. Either way, one night after dinner, they sat me down at the kitchen table. The look on their faces told me everything I needed to know. They knew. Not just about the bullying, not just about the rumors, but about me. There was no dramatic reveal. No confession forced out of me. Just silence. Long, heavy, unbearable silence. Then my mom finally spoke. "We heard things," she said softly. "We wanted to hear it from you." I stared at the table, my hands clenched tightly in my lap. I couldn't bring myself to look at either of them. They waited. And waited. Finally, I whispered, "It's true." The moment the words left my mouth, I felt like I had lost control of everything. Like I had handed over the last piece of myself that I could still hide. My dad didn't say anything at first. He just sat there, staring at me like he was trying to process what I had just admitted. His face was unreadable, not angry, not sad, not shocked. Just blank. My mom reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "We just want you to be safe," she said gently. "We're worried about you." "I'm fine," I mumbled, pulling my hand away. "You're not fine," she said, voice firm now. "You're being bullied. You're isolating yourself. You haven't been sleeping. We see it." I shook my head. "I just need time." "What you need," my dad finally said, his voice low and serious, "is to think about what you're doing to yourself." I looked up at him then, confused. "What?" He sighed, rubbing his temples like he was trying to hold back frustration. "Son, we love you. But you have to understand, this isn't normal. What you're going through, what you're feeling, it's not right." I felt my stomach drop. "What are you talking about?" He met my eyes then, and for the first time, I saw disappointment in them. Real, honest disappointment. "This isn't who you're supposed to be. You're still young. You still have time to fix this." "Fix what?" I asked, voice rising. "Who I am." He didn't answer. He just looked away. That was when I realized it wasn't just the school that was against me. It wasn't just the bullies, the rumors, the hate. It was home too. The place I was supposed to feel safe. The people who were supposed to protect me. Instead, they wanted me to change. The next few weeks were unbearable. I was grounded for no real reason other than to keep me away from people. I was forced into counseling, not with someone who actually understood, but with someone my dad trusted, someone who made it clear from the start that they believed being gay was a phase, a mistake, a problem to be solved. Every session felt like another reminder that I was broken, that I was wrong, that I needed to be fixed. At school, things only got worse. The teasing turned into physical aggression. One day, someone poured soda on me in the hallway. Another time, I came back to my desk and found my books torn, pages ripped out and scattered across the floor. And through it all, he stayed away. I texted once. Just a simple message, "I miss you." No reply. I tried again a week later, "Can we talk?" Still nothing. Eventually, I stopped trying. Instead, I wrote him a letter. I spent hours on it, writing every thought, every feeling, every apology I never got to say out loud. I told him I was sorry for hiding. Sorry for pushing him away. Sorry for letting fear ruin what we had. I told him I didn't expect him to forgive me. I told him I just needed him to know the truth. I slipped the letter under his door late one night, hoping he'd find it in the morning. He never mentioned it, never acknowledged it, never gave me any sign that he even read it. And that was when I truly broke. One night, after another fight with my dad, I grabbed my jacket and walked out. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't care. I just needed to get away. Away from the house. Away from the pressure. Away from the pain. I ended up wandering the streets for hours, tears mixing with the cold wind as I moved without direction. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just kept walking, hoping that somehow, somewhere, I would disappear. Eventually, I found myself at the old bus station, the place we used to hang out before everything fell apart. The memories hit me like a wave. Sitting on the bench with him, sharing earbuds, listening to music while waiting for the rain to pass. Laughing at stupid inside jokes only we understood. Feeling like I belonged somewhere. Now, I just felt empty. I sat down on the same bench, wrapping my arms around myself as I stared off into the distance. I thought about ending it. About just giving up. About making the pain stop. I thought about jumping in front of the next bus. Just closing my eyes and letting go. But I didn't. Because in that moment, I remembered something, not a memory, not a person, but a feeling. A tiny flicker of hope buried so deep I almost forgot it existed. I didn't want to die. I wanted to live. Not like this. Not broken, but free. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that maybe, just maybe, that was still possible. I thought I had nothing left. But sometimes, the darkest nights lead to the brightest dawns. That night at the bus station was the lowest point I'd ever reached. I don't know how long I sat there, wrapped in my hoodie, staring into the distance like I could somehow disappear just by willing it hard enough. The city lights blurred together through my tears. The cold bit at my skin, but I didn't move. I didn't care. All I could feel was the weight of everything pressing down on me, the hate, the fear, the loneliness, the regret. And underneath it all, a quiet kind of surrender. Like maybe this was how it was always going to end. Not with a bang, not with drama, not even with words. Just silence. Just me, alone in the dark, waiting for something I couldn't name. But then, out of nowhere, headlights cut through the fog. A car pulled up slowly, tires crunching against the gravel. I barely looked up. I didn't care who it was. Whoever they were, they wouldn't understand. Nobody did. The window rolled down. Hey. The voice was familiar. Young. Soft. Concerned. I turned my head slightly and saw her, his little sister. Sitting behind the wheel of her old Honda, eyes wide with worry. "What are you doing out here?" she asked gently. I shrugged. Just thinking. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, without another word, she opened the door and stepped out. She walked around the front of the car and came to sit beside me on the bench, tucking her hands into the pockets of her jacket. "You look like hell," she said after a while. I let out a weak laugh. "Thanks." She studied me for a second before speaking again. "You okay?" I hesitated. For so long, I had trained myself to keep everything locked inside. To never show weakness. To never let anyone see me fall apart. But sitting there, next to someone who wasn't judging me, who wasn't trying to fix me, who was just there, something broke open inside me. "No," I whispered. "Not really." She nodded like she already knew. "Yeah, I figured." We sat in silence for a few more minutes. Then she turned to me and said, "You know, I've always known." My heart stopped. "What?" I asked, barely above a whisper. She didn't look away. "About you. About him. About everything." I felt my stomach drop. I wanted to run. I wanted to pretend I hadn't heard her. But I couldn't move. "I'm not going to tell anyone," she said quickly, sensing my panic. "It's not my story to tell. But I just wanted you to know that you're not as invisible as you think." I stared at her, stunned. "How long have you known?" "A while," she admitted. "You guys were never obvious or anything. But I always noticed things. The way he looked at you when he thought no one was watching. The way you two talked. The way you both changed after everything happened." I swallowed hard. "Did your dad know too?" She sighed, looking down at her hands. "He suspected. He never said anything outright, but I think he figured it out. He just didn't know what to do with it." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, neither did I." She glanced at me, sadness in her eyes. "You should have told him." I shook my head. "I tried. It didn't go well." She nodded. "I know. He told me. He was confused, hurt, angry, even, but mostly, scared." I blinked at her. "He talked to you about it?" "Yeah," she said softly. "After everything blew up, he came to me. Said he didn't know how to handle it. That he didn't want to lose his son over something he didn't understand." I felt something tighten in my chest. "He still thinks it's something to handle." She gave me a small smile. "He's trying. Slowly. Maybe not the way you want him to, but he's trying." I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. After a long pause, she turned to me again. "Do you miss him?" I closed my eyes, letting the question settle deep inside me. "Every day." She nodded like she understood. "Then why don't you fight for him?" I looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She took a breath. He misses you too. He just doesn't know how to come back from this. He's scared. But so are you. So instead of waiting for him to make the first move, maybe you should. I shook my head. It's not that simple. It is, she insisted. Because if you don't try, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had spent so long running from this, from him, from us, from the truth, that I had convinced myself it was easier to let go. But maybe it wasn't easier. Maybe it was just cowardice. Maybe I was ready to stop hiding. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know if he would listen. If he would forgive me. If he would even want to talk to me again. But I knew I had to try. So I sent him a message. Can we meet? Please. I didn't expect an answer right away. Hell, I didn't expect an answer at all. But 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Okay. That was it. One word. No explanation. No questions. Just agreement. And somehow, that was enough. We met at our old spot, the park where we used to hang out after school. The same place we laughed, the same place we argued, the same place we once swore we'd be best friends forever. He was already there when I arrived. Sitting on the bench, hands in his pockets, gaze fixed on the ground. When he heard me approach, he looked up. Our eyes met, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't look away. We didn't speak right away. We just stood there, staring at each other like we were both trying to figure out where to begin. Finally, he said, "You came." I nodded. I did. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I didn't think you would. I took a slow step forward. I should have come sooner. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he gestured toward the bench. Sit down. I did. We sat in silence for a while. The air between us was heavy, but not with anger. More like exhaustion. Like we were both carrying the weight of everything we never got to say. Eventually, he spoke. Why now? I looked at him. Because I realized I didn't want to lose you. His jaw tightened. You already did. I winced. I know. He turned to me then, really looked at me, like he was seeing me for the first time in months. Why didn't you tell me? I swallowed hard. Because I was scared. Of losing you. Of ruining what we had. Of making things worse. He let out a quiet breath. You didn't ruin anything. We both did. I looked down. I'm sorry. He didn't respond right away. Then, finally, he said, I missed you. I looked up sharply. My throat tightened. I missed you too, I whispered. And then, without warning, he reached out and pulled me into a hug. I froze for half a second, surprised. Then I wrapped my arms around him, holding on like I was afraid he might disappear if I let go. He squeezed tighter. I'm sorry I shut you out. I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to, I said into his shoulder. We stayed like that for a long time. Just holding on, letting go of the past, making space for whatever came next. When we finally pulled apart, he looked at me and smiled, the first real smile I had seen from him in months. I don't know what happens now, he said. I nodded. Me either. But I want to find out. So did I. For the first time in a long time, I felt something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. Not everything was fixed. Not everything was perfect. But something had shifted. And maybe that was enough to start healing. I used to hide in the shadows. Now, I'm learning to walk into the light. It didn't happen all at once. Healing never does. It wasn't like one conversation with him changed everything or erased all the pain I had carried for so long. But it was a start. A real one. And sometimes, that's all you need. Just one step forward, even if your legs are shaking and your heart is still bruised. After that day at the park, things began to shift. Slowly. Carefully. Like we were both walking on glass, afraid of breaking something fragile. We started talking again, not like before, not like nothing had happened, but like two people who had lost each other and were trying to find their way back. We didn't rush. We didn't pretend. We just gave ourselves time. And with every conversation, every laugh, every shared silence, I felt a little lighter. He didn't ask me to explain everything. He didn't demand answers I wasn't ready to give. He just listened. Just sat beside me while I tried to untangle the mess inside my head. And in doing that, he reminded me what it felt like to be understood. Not judged. Not fixed. Just seen. But healing wasn't just about him. It was about me too. About learning how to live in my own skin without flinching every time someone looked at me the wrong way. About finding strength in the parts of myself I used to be ashamed of. About realizing that I didn't have to carry the weight of everyone else's expectations anymore. So I started opening up. Not all at once, not to everyone, but to the people who mattered. To the few friends who stayed by my side even when I pushed them away. To the ones who saw me hurting and didn't turn their backs. One night, after weeks of thinking about it, I finally told one of them the truth. "I'm gay," I said, voice barely above a whisper. She didn't react the way I thought she would. No shock, no questions, no awkward pause. She just smiled and said, "Yeah, I know." I blinked. "You do. Of course," she said. "You've always been you. Nothing changes that." Hearing her say that, hearing her accept me without hesitation, made something inside me break open in the best possible way. I didn't cry, but I wanted to. Because for the first time, I realized that maybe not everyone would hate me for who I was. Maybe not everyone would reject me. Maybe there were people out there who would stand by me, even when the world didn't. That night, I told another friend. Then another. And slowly, the people around me became my armor. My support system. My safe place. I also found a group online, a community of LGBTQ+ teens who understood exactly what I was going through. At first, I just read their stories, watching from the sidelines like I wasn't sure I belonged. But eventually, I started sharing mine. Not everything, not right away, but enough. Enough to feel like I wasn't alone. Enough to hear people say, "I get it." Enough to realize that I wasn't broken. I was just different. And being different wasn't a bad thing. My parents were harder to reach. They weren't cruel, not really. But they didn't understand. Not yet. My dad still saw this as something I needed to work through. My mom tried to be supportive, but I could see the worry in her eyes. The fear that I would always struggle. That I would always be targeted. That I would never have an easy life. Maybe she was right. Maybe my life wouldn't be easy. But that didn't mean it wouldn't be mine. One day, after weeks of small conversations and careful steps, I sat down with them again. This time, I didn't wait for them to ask questions. I just spoke. "This isn't a phase," I said. "This isn't something I can fix. This is who I am. And I don't want to hide it anymore." They didn't respond right away. My dad looked at me like he was trying to figure out if I was serious. My mom reached for my hand. "We just want you to be safe," she said softly. "I know," I replied. "But being safe doesn't mean living in fear. It means living as myself." My dad sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's not that simple." "No," I agreed. "It's not. But it's necessary." For the first time, he didn't argue. He just looked at me, really looked at me, like he was seeing past the fear and disappointment and starting to see me. His son. The person I had always been, even when I was too scared to admit it. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't instant acceptance, but it was progress. And for now, that was enough. As the weeks passed, I kept growing stronger. Not because everything suddenly became easy, but because I stopped letting the hard parts define me. I started dressing how I wanted, talking how I wanted, laughing without worrying about who might hear. I stopped shrinking, stopped hiding, stopped pretending, and then came the moment I had been avoiding for so long. I posted something online. Not a deep confession, not a dramatic announcement, just a photo. Me, smiling, standing tall, looking at the camera like I wasn't afraid anymore. And under it, a caption. "This is me, finally." The response was overwhelming. Some people commented with kindness. Others with encouragement. A few with negativity. But for once, the good outweighed the bad. Someone wrote, "Thank you for being brave." Another said, "You're not alone." One message stood out more than the rest: "Your story matters." And I believed it. Because for the first time, I felt like it did. I still had a long way to go. There were still days when the fear crept back in. When the memories of the bullying, the silence, the loneliness came rushing back like a wave I couldn't escape. But those moments didn't control me anymore. I controlled them. I knew now that I wasn't weak. I wasn't broken. I was resilient. I was learning. I was healing. And most importantly, I was living. Not in fear, not in shame, but in truth, in light, in freedom. And I was finally ready to keep going. My story might be mine, but it belongs to so many others. I used to think I was the only one who felt like this, like I didn't belong. Like I had to hide parts of myself just to survive another day. Like love and identity were things I could only dream about from a distance. But now I know better. Because every time I speak, someone else finds the courage to whisper their truth. Every time I share my pain, someone else realizes they're not alone. And every time I stand tall, unapologetically me, someone else sees that it's possible. This journey wasn't easy. It was filled with silence, fear, betrayal, loss, and heartbreak. There were days I wanted to give up. Moments when I thought I couldn't go on. Nights where I stared at the ceiling wondering if anyone would even notice if I disappeared. But somehow, through all the darkness, I found light. Not in some grand moment of clarity or dramatic turning point, but in small, steady steps toward healing. I found it in the people who stayed by my side even when I pushed them away. In the friend who finally came back to me, not because everything was fixed, but because we both still cared enough to try again. In his sister, who saw more than she let on and reminded me that sometimes, the people closest to us understand us better than we realize. In strangers online who shared their stories and made me feel seen. In my mom, who held my hand and told me she just wanted me to be safe. And yes, even in my dad, who may not fully understand yet, but is trying. That alone meant more than words could say. Coming out wasn't a single event for me. It was a process. A long, exhausting, emotional process. Some people knew before I even said the words. Others never asked. But what mattered most was that I stopped hiding. I stopped pretending. I stopped apologizing for existing. And now, here I am, standing in the open, breathing freely for the first time in years. But my story isn't just about being gay. It's about fear, about shame, about isolation, about learning to love yourself when the world tells you not to. It's about finding strength in vulnerability. About realizing that your voice matters, even if it shakes when you use it. About understanding that no matter how broken you feel, healing is always possible, even if it takes longer than you expect. If there's one thing I want you to take from this, it's this: you are not alone. There are millions of people out there who have walked paths like yours. Who have stood at the edge of giving up and somehow found the strength to keep going. Who have been hurt, misunderstood, rejected, and still managed to rise. And if you're reading this right now, if you've made it this far, then I know you're one of them. Maybe you're still hiding. Maybe you're scared. Maybe you don't know how to tell the people you love who you really are. Or maybe you already did, and things didn't go the way you hoped. Whatever your story is, I see you. And I want you to know that it's okay to take your time. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to need help. What's not okay is letting fear define your life forever. You deserve to live without hiding. You deserve to love without apology. You deserve to exist exactly as you are, beautifully, powerfully, unapologetically you. So if this story moved you, if it reminded you that you're not alone, I ask you to do something for me. Hit that like button, not just for me, but for everyone who needs to hear this. Subscribe to this channel, so you don't miss the next story, because trust me, there will be more. Stories of struggle, survival, and strength. Real stories. Raw stories. Relatable stories. And if you feel brave enough, leave a comment below. Tell me your story. Or just say the words, "I'm not alone." Because saying it out loud can be the first step toward believing it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And remember, no matter who you are, or what you're going through, your story matters. You matter. And you are not alone.